Hello everyone, hope you all are doing well. Welcome to our We Educate channel. Today we'll be talking about part 2 of Mahatma Gandhi, which is the economic and the political ideas of Mahatma Gandhi, 1869 to 1948. Also, the part 1 of Mahatma Gandhi, which is about the life and the contributions of Mahatma Gandhi in the Indian freedom struggle, has been uploaded on our We Educate channel. So if you haven't watched it till now, please go and do watch it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe our channel. So let's begin with part 2, before which I would like to quote Mahatma Gandhi's famous quote, which is, "Only he can be a leader who never loses hope." Talking about Gandhian economics, it is based on the spiritual and socio-economic principles propounded by Mahatma Gandhi. It is characterized by the rejection of concept of human being as a rational actor, always seeking to maximize material self-interest that underlines classical economic thought, where Western economic system was based on what is called multiplication of wants, and he felt this was an unsustainable and devastating to human spirit. His model aimed at fulfillment of needs, including the need for meaning and community. As a school of economics, the resulting model contained the elements of protectionism, nationalism, adherence to the objectives and the principles of non-violence, and rejection of class war in favor of socio-economic harmony. Gandhi's economic ideas also aim to promote spiritual development and harmony with the rejection of materialism. And the term Gandhian economics was coined by J.C. Kumara, a close supporter of Gandhi. So the first economic thought that we are going to do, that which was propounded by Mahatma Gandhi, is Sarvodaya. Sarvodaya in simple terms means universal upliftment. And since we all know that 21st century is the era of globalization, and the new economic policy of globalization moves on to make the world a global village in which new challenges and problems have emerged. So basically what is happening today in the 21st century is in line to what Gandhi predicted in his Hind Swaraj as he prepared his manuscript in 1908, and he put forward four main goals of humanity so as to move towards its destiny, which are Swaraj, non-violence, Swadeshi and Sarvodaya. These are the four main pillars of the thesis he has propounded in the Hind Swaraj, and out of these four, Sarvodaya was the term coined by Gandhi as the title of his 1908 translation of John Ruskin tract on political economy unto this last, and Gandhi came to use the term for the ideal of his own political philosophy. Gandhi advances the concept of Sarvodaya, which are based on three basic principles. The first one is the good of the individual is contained in the good of all. Secondly, that a lawyer's work has a same value as the barber's, in as much as all have the same right of earning their livelihood from their work. Thirdly, the life of the laborer and the life of the tailor, of the soil, and the handicraftsman is the life worth lived. Mahatma Gandhi was of the firm view that the earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed. This is also a famous quote by Mahatma Gandhi. Coming to the objectives of Sarvodaya, the Sarvodaya movement has as it started, the establishment of the whole network of such self-sufficiency and self-supporting village communities. Agriculture will be so planned that all the people will have enough to consume, and industry will be conducted on a cottage basis till all the people in the village are gainfully employed. Also, the needs of the village will be determined by the people of the village themselves through the village council, that is the representative of the whole village. Coming to the principles of Sarvodaya, there will be no centralized authority and there is political and economic atmosphere in the village. Secondly, politics will not be the instrument of power but an agency of service, and Rajniti will yield place to Lokniti. Thirdly, there will be a no-party system and majority rule, and society will be free from the evil of the tyranny of the majority. Fourthly, the Sarvodaya society is based on equality and liberty, and there is no room for competition, exploitation, and class hatred. Fifthly, there will be no private property, the instrument of exploitation and the source of social distinction and hatred. Similarly, the profit motive will disappear. Next, Sarvodaya stands for the progress of the all, and lastly, the Sarvodaya movement is based on truth, non-violence, and self-denial. Coming to our next economic thought as propounded by Mahatma Gandhi is trusteeship. Mahatma Gandhi, the doctrine of trusteeship, is a social and economic philosophy aiming to bring justice in the society. It provides a means by which the wealthy people would be the trustees of the trust that looked after the welfare of the people in general. Gandhi holds that labor is superior to capital. This principle reflects Gandhi's spiritual development, which he holds partly to his deep involvement to theosophical literature and to the study of Bhagavad Gita. Though his views resemble those of Karl Marx, but unlike Marxism, he would not recommend the overthrow of capitalists by force. And Gandhian principle of trusteeship assumes great relevance nationally as well as internationally, keeping in mind the growing inequality and poverty. For example, recent Oxfam report released that 1% people in the world possesses 50% of the world's total wealth, and particularly in the case of India, 1% people owns about 58% of total wealth. This entire picture unearths the socio-economic injustice that is prevailing in our society. The principle of trusteeship is closely related to the social responsibility of business, according to which all business firms must work like a trust. Trusteeship tries to reduce inequalities. It tries to reduce the huge gap that prevails between the rich and the poor. And according to Gandhi, businessmen have no moral right to accumulate unlimited wealth, while most of the countrymen live in poverty and misery. Gandhi's idea of trusteeship arose from his faith in the law of non-possession. It was founded on his religious belief that everything belonged to God. And the two major points here are: the resources of the world were for God's people as a whole and not for any particular individual. Secondly, when an individual had more than his respected portion, he became a trust of that particular portion for the people. Thirdly, material prosperity and human dignity. Gandhi aims the distribution of material prosperity, keeping only human dignity in view. Thus, it is dominated more by moral values than by economic ideas. Fourthly, the doctrine is a non-violent way of resolving all the social and economic conflicts which grew out of inequalities and privileges of the present social order. Talking about the relevance of trusteeship, the prevailing socio-economic conditions of the world makes the idea of trusteeship even more relevant in today's era. Firstly, because of the huge prevailing inequalities and the huge gap that's there between the rich and the poor. With regards to the environment, that is degrading, emission of greenhouse gases is affecting the global climate and causing various catastrophic disasters and diseases. Talking about the overexploitation of natural resources, minerals, oil, gas and coal are all non-renewable resources. They are used as materials and energy sources, lead to depletion of the earth's reserves. Talking about the trust provides solutions to various challenges of the 21st century. under which first is sustainable consumption, that is, consume what is enough for the need without harming the other resources. Secondly, exploitation of natural resources, taking care of the resources that nature has provided us with. Thirdly, dignity of labor, that is ensuring decent minimum living wages and humane working conditions for the laborers. Fourthly, equitable distribution of wealth, that is moral responsibility of the rich to take care of the social welfare of the underprivileged. Now, the initiatives taken in India as so far are: firstly, corporates today affect the lives of the people both positively and negatively. While they provide employment and economic growth in the country, other externalities like pollution or depletion or exploitation of natural resources are also there, which are occurring side by side. The huge leverage of capital and technology that businessmen and industrialists have at their disposal can be used for smart solutions in various sectors and even in improving the health and sanitation and other conditions of the society. Also, CSR, that is the corporate social responsibility, it brings in the participation of the upper strata in building a just society and decreasing the inequalities that prevail in the society. Coming to our next economic thought, that is khadi and small scale industries. So there's a confusion of thought regarding the term village, cottage and home industry. So here are the differences between village, cottage and home industries. Firstly, we'll discuss about it. So in a village industry, production, distribution and consumption are more or less within the village. The potters make the pot not for sale in England but for the use in the village. His consumer is his next door neighbor. The number of things that he produces are produced, consumed and distributed in the local area only. Talking about the cottage industries, a cottage industry only refers to the method of production. In a cottage industry, we may have large number of workers, but still it may remain a village industry. We may have, like for example, we have the Sanganer in Kanpur paper industry. A number of people may be working there, but it is a village industry. For example, sandalwood and ivory carving, here the production is in the cottage. The consumption may be anywhere in Paris, New York or London. The cottages are made to work for the consumption by the consumers anywhere. Talking about the home industries are carried out by homemakers who are generally women for their home purposes. For example, embroidery work and a certain amount of knitting and needlework items like jam, pickle, papad, etc. are all home industries. Raw materials at that time were entirely exported to England and then re-imported as costly finished cloth, depriving the local population of work and profits on it. Gandhi also felt that in a country where manual labor was looked down upon, it was an occupation to bring high and low, rich and poor together, to show them the dignity of hand labor. It was for economic, cultural and social reasons and not merely political that Gandhi established the Khadi movement. Gandhi started with Khadi and combined it with the national movement. The more and more we decentralize, the more and more we get into methods which are morally and spiritually on a higher plane. If food, clothing and shelter are needed, all these should be provided by people who are working through decentralized units. This does not rule out the larger scale industries at all. But knowing the dangers, we sterilize it by taking away the profit motive, substituting for it only the service motive. We should keep large-scale industries under definite control because they are not conducive to the growth of Swaraj, namely the welfare of the general public being represented in the Council of the Nation. Also in 1934 to 1935, Gandhi expanded the idea from helping the poor individual to self-reliance of whole villages. Gandhi's views on labor and capital include, according to Gandhi, the general erosion of the human values in the Indian society was also reflected in the relations between the capital and the labor. He believed that capital and labor were manually complementary forces. Also, the living conditions of the laborers were a great shame to the industrialists. He knew of the laborers who lived in Mumbai and they lived in boxes, which were literally known as the houses, where there was no ventilation and terrible overcrowding. Also, they worked long hours in the miserable conditions. Their food was also inedible and they had no friends to give them advice. Also, he blamed the educated classes for not caring to find out the wants and the aspirations of the labor classes. They had not taken the trouble to spread political consciousness among them, and they were kept aloof and yet expected them to help in a national cause about which they did not know anything. The labor component of the society had to greatly struggle for an harmonious relationship with its employers and also for common grounds of interest among themselves. Moreover, they were often under the influence of the leaders who were provincial or communal in their outlook and sometimes even unscrupulous. But in situations where there was no conflict of interest between the class of the employers and the employed, and the advisors to both sides had a genuine desire that both sides cooperate for mutual benefit, it was seen that the adversarial relationship between the employer and the worker could be replaced by harmonious interaction. And to bring about this harmonious relationship between the laborers and the educated class, a successful working of the labor union of Ahmedabad textile mills was reorganized under Gandhi. Today, there is an amount of serfdom among agricultural labor and dehumanizing practices are going on all over the country. In South India, people take a loan of 10 or 15 rupees and work for generation under a landlord. Talking about Gandhian economic thought in practice, immediately after the independence, the Indian planning procedure incorporated many crucial Gandhian thoughts into the 5-year plans. And although Nehru disagreed with Gandhi with respect to the heavy amount of industrialization and the use of machinery, but several important Gandhian visions were sought to be achieved through economic planning. Gandhi valued human values over economic values, and for him, every country should have an economic system that should suit its socio-economic reality. Many important social ideas advocated by Gandhi, like the Khadi industries, Swadeshi promotion, uh, cooperative movements, democratic decentralization through Panchayati Raj, minimum wage for laborers, and the adequate working conditions, and the land reforms and the land seedlings were incorporated into these 5-year plans. And different social schemes are also launched, like plans for universal education, removing untouchability, addressing the evils of caste prohibition, and uplifting the status of the women in India. Gandhiji's views on the industrial relations were incorporated into the Industrial Disputes Act 1947. Also, Gandhi was a supporter of minimum interference from state into the daily lives of the people, but the Indian state grew in in every sphere of national life after the independence. This has also gone hand in hand with the establishments of the industrial townships, development of nuclear and missile technology, heavy machinery, and adoption of neoliberal policies after 1991. although many would argue that Indian state has largely remained a welfare state as envisioned by Gandhi. And many of the Gandhian economic insights have of late been adopted by the environmentalists and people advocating sustainable living. Also, Gandhi's famous quote that the earth provides enough for every man's needs but not for every man's greeds outlines the theory of sustainability, which is very much prevalent in today's era. Also, the new found focus on inclusive growth and the policy making along with the programs like Manrega, Right to Food reflect a long-term Gandhian ideas about the developing India. With this, we come to the end of part 2 of Mahatma Gandhi. Don't forget to like the video and also subscribe our We Educate channel. Also, visit our Arthran website and be a member of it for all the updations about the videos as well as about the mock tests that will be held thereafter. And stay connected for part 3 of Mahatma Gandhi. Thank you so much for watching.